Shabbat Shalom. I am honored to be able to be here with you remotely and share some thoughts about Torah. Uh, Thoughts that I'm sure are not just in my head. I've been thinking a lot about connection and disconnection these days as we're discovering new ways to be connected and new feelings around disconnection. Uh, Emor, our Parshat, like the whole of the book of Vayikra, is dense with laws. But it's unusual that Emor contains a story. In all of Sefer Vayikra, it had the story in Emor is only one of two narratives, two extended stories, within a book filled with ethics and morals and laws. These two narratives are difficult for a reader. First, in Parshat Shmini, Aaron's two sons are killed for the way they try to serve God. Second, in Parshat Emor, a man identified as the son of Shlomit, daughter of Divri of the tribe of Dan, blasphemes and is executed for this crime. Preceding this narrative, Emor details laws of holy people, for holy people, holy relationships, holy time, and holy space. These are laws which, quoting our Haftarah, teach God's people the difference between the holy and the common, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. Ezekiel is prescient in writing these words. Someone like me learns these differences through reading and translating. I perceive them as not to be natural, obvious, or innate differences. And in the Torah's framework, they're legal distinctions which carry life or death consequences. I had the mundane experience not long ago of filling out a form that asked for my race. It was a standard form, and the categories available were the same as on the census. But standard or not, in the last few years, as we've heard an increasing cacophony from white nationalists, these checkboxes are no longer as simple as they might have once been. I checked the white box, knowing that as a Jew and as a Greek, many people who defend their whiteness with words and actions consider whiteness to exclude Jewishness. I checked the white box, knowing that my skin color, lack of accent, European ancestry, privilege and advantages, among other things, are what amount to whiteness. These advantages and this existence is as subtle and as easy as breathing air. I checked the box begrudgingly, knowing that race is created by institutions and communities as a way of establishing and defending, teaching certain kinds of differences between people so that they can be discerned and separated. Race is not in our bodies, not in our DNA, not in our beings, but in our interpersonal and societal relationships. The identity question is not recent, of course, for most of us. One of my first clear memories of dealing with my racial identity comes from my childhood. A white, non-Jewish adult friend of the family said in casual conversation, "I don't really believe that about Jews being a different race. Jews are a religion, not a race, right? We're really the same." I remember feeling at the time like there was some bigger background behind the question, but I did not have the same understanding of history then that I do today. In that moment, I was confronted with a choice between different kinds of difference. Religion implied that we were separated by ideas. It was a permeable barrier. Race implied a barrier that we could not cross. In that moment, I could have said that we were the same in spite of Jewishness or different because of it. That was a moment of power over my Jewish identity, but not over the terms of identification. Neither race nor religion were the right choices. But interactions like these create and recreate, teach one's identity by teaching difference, informing us what differences we should discern, and then what we do with those differences. Behind a tiny checkbox is an avalanche of history. Parshat Emor concludes with this story. There came out among the Israelites one whose mother was Israelite and whose father was Egyptian. And a fight broke out in the camp between that son of an Israelite woman and one Israelite. The son of the Israelite woman cursed the name in insult, and he was brought to Moshe. His mother's name was Shlomit, daughter of Divri of the tribe of Dan. He was then taken into custody and was sentenced by God. The Torah continues, "Take the one who cursed outside the camp. Let all who were within hearing lay their hands upon his head, and let the whole community stone him. This compressed story contains a remarkable amount of detail. In particular, I'll note that we know the name of the criminal's mother and his heritage. And we read about the process of carrying out the execution. Understood literally, all witnesses come forward and are in physical contact with the son of Shlomit before the execution, which involves everyone in the community. Following this, God states twice that there must be one standard of law for both stranger and citizen, and cites what scholars refer to as lex talionis, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. So much in Emor is alienating. Purity, sacrifice, capital punishment, a reference to eye for an eye, which is such an off-putting criminal justice philosophy that our rabbinic tradition never ever took it literally. And in discussing priests' bodies, the text presents a perspective that today is clearly anti-disability. And despite all this, the Parsha feels viscerally real. On the one hand, Emor contains laws that speak directly to our political reality, to be equitable to the ger, a word often translated as stranger. For rabbis reading the Torah, a ger was a convert. For the authors of the Torah, a ger was some kind of non-Israelite. Gerim may have been economically stable enough to offer a sacrifice and participate equally in society. But Gerim are also mentioned alongside the poor, orphaned, and widowed. In Emor, the fourth time God references Gerim follows his sentencing of Shlomit's son to death. Mishpat echad yiyeh lachem, kager ka'ezrach yiyeh. You shall have one standard for stranger and citizen alike. Bible scholar Richard Elliott Friedman identifies 52 times in Torah that we're required to treat the ger fairly. 52. It's clear that acting with justice towards those on the margins is critical to Torah. And I'm not the first to connect that Torah's overwhelming concern over the ger applies today to immigrants at our borders, refugees, and asylum seekers. But why does the Torah teach us to treat marginalized people equitably here in Parshat Emor in reference to the son of an Israelite? I think if the Torah had only had 51 instances of this commandment, it would still be important. It's easy to connect this law here about the foreigner to the son of Shlomit and his parentage. He's half Egyptian. And see that the Torah is using this criminal case as proof for how Jews must treat foreigners. They are supposed to have equal status under the law, for better or, in this case, worse. But reading the text this way, we are choosing to check non-Israelite for the identity of Shlomit's son. And just like the checkboxes on the census, there's a backstory here too. Torah has actually gone to great ends to reveal a background. And it's not a given that Torah would expose this much about a defendant or the details of a case. Scholar Wendy Zerler brought this midrash from Sifra that fleshes out the backstory further. And the son of an Israelite woman, whose father was an Egyptian, went out among the children of Israel. Where did he go out from? From Moses' court, for he had sought to pitch his tent in the camp of Dan. They, the other tribesmen, said to him, "What right do you have to pitch your tent in the camp of Dan?" He said, "I'm a descendant from the daughters of Dan." They answered that tribal portions follow the house of the father. He appealed before the court of Moses and lost his case. So he rose and reviled God. Just like understanding the ger to apply to people at our borders, we can also understand the ger as applying to people in our midst. I stopped for a coffee from a regular spot and chatted with Sammy, a barista I was friendly with. Long story short, I knew from conversation that Sammy's mom was white and dad black. Finding out I'm Jewish, Sammy said, "I'm Jewish too, sort of. My mom's Jewish, and I wasn't raised going to synagogue or anything. But my mom has always told me that I'm Jewish and that I was born a Jew. But the Jewish kids in high school told me I wasn't." When I was a teenager and while working with youth as an adult, I've heard many stories also of teens who felt excluded from Jewishness on the basis of belief or not belief in God. The idea that Jewishness was something like a faith meant for them that they were not Jews if they didn't believe in the God they thought that their Jewish faith told them they should believe in. Thinking a lot here about connections and disconnections. Martin Buber, the quintessential Jewish philosopher and educator, wrote that a person becomes an I through a you. An I require a you to become. This is profound. We have the ability naturally and in our interactions to create another's identity and also to take it away. That happens in small moments when we check boxes on forms, and it happens in peer-to-peer interactions, teacher-student interactions. But Parshat Emor also shows us that we have opportunities to intervene, even when we think disconnection is what we're supposed to be doing. 3 different places in the sentencing of the son of Shlomit are moments of intervention, where the son of Shlomit could have been brought back to the community. First, the son of Shlomit was to be brought outside of the camp, literally ousting him. Second, all the witnesses were to come forward and place their hands on his head, be in intimate physical contact. And then the execution itself involved everyone in the community. We have a chance to establish connection at every point here, rather than taking him out of the camp. Could there have been another process? Rather than the witnesses placing their hands on him, could they have said no? Could someone in the community have said, wait, there might be another way? Right now, as we are all feeling new kinds of disconnection from each other, I am yearning for connection with you all. And I'm also deeply hoping that we'll have a renewed ability to affirm connection with each other, rather than understanding ourselves as discerning disparities. Going forward, I hope dearly that we're going to be able to manufacture connection and intervene in those times when we knowingly and unknowingly manufacture disconnection. I look forward to the togetherness that we will have again. I look forward to becoming me again through each of you. Shabbat Shalom.